The rain poured down in sheets as Officer James Mercer pulled his patrol car to the curb of Oakwood Avenue. Another domestic disturbance call, the third one tonight. His shoulders slumped with exhaustion as he reached for his radio to confirm his arrival at the scene. 12 hours into a double shift, his patience was wearing thin. Dispatch, this is Officer Mercer. I'm at 1457 Oakwood Avenue responding to the domestic disturbance call. Copy that, Officer Mercer. Be advised, caller seemed distressed but wouldn't provide details. Neighbor reported hearing shouting. James sighed as he stepped out into the downpour. These calls rarely ended well. Either it was a legitimate case that would haunt him for days, or a waste of time that took him away from real emergencies. Either way, the paperwork would keep him at the station well past the end of his shift. The apartment complex was old but well maintained, a 3-story brick building with exterior walkways. Apartment 2B was on the second floor. James trudged up the stairs, rainwater dripping from his uniform. His knees ached from an old football injury, a reminder of dreams abandoned for a badge that lately felt heavier with each passing day. He reached 2B and paused, listening. Silence, not even a television. He knocked firmly on the door. Police, open up. Nothing. He knocked again, louder this time. Police officer, I need you to open the door. A woman's voice, barely audible, called from inside. Please, go away. Everything's fine. Her voice trembled. James had heard that tremor too many times before. It was fear, not embarrassment. Ma'am, I need to verify that everyone inside is safe. Please open the door. I can't. Please, just leave. It was a mistake. James leaned closer to the door, his instincts suddenly alert. Something in her voice, a subtle plea beneath the words. Ma'am, I'm not leaving until I see that you're okay. Silence again. James weighed his options. No sounds of immediate danger, no legal grounds to force entry. The rain continued to soak through his uniform. His shift was supposed to end in 30 minutes. The paperwork for a forced entry would take hours. Another officer might turn away, cite lack of probable cause, move on to the next call. Part of him wanted to do exactly that. Just then, his phone vibrated in his pocket. A text from Lisa, his wife. Will you make it to Tommy's game? He's been asking. His son's championship Little League game was tonight. He'd promised to be there, the same promise he'd broken too many times before. James stared at the door, conflicted. He could reasonably justify leaving. Document the visit, note the resident's refusal, and clear the call. His sergeant wouldn't question it. Nobody would know. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to open this door, or I'll have to call for backup. A soft sob from inside. Please. He'll know. He'll hurt me worse if you make a scene. James felt his professional detachment slipping. Who will hurt you? Is there someone else in the apartment? No, he's gone now, but he watches the building. Please just go. Please. James rubbed his face, feeling the stubble beneath his fingers. He should push harder, but the clock was ticking. Tommy's game started in an hour. Listen, I can help you, but you need to open the door. You can't help. Nobody can. Please. The defeat in her voice hit James like a physical blow. He'd heard it before, in his mother's voice decades ago, when she'd begged the officers to leave, afraid of what his father would do once they were gone. They had left, and that night had changed everything. I'm not leaving, James said firmly. Take your time, but I'll be standing right here until I see that you're safe. Minutes passed. The hallway was silent except for the distant sound of rain. James's phone vibrated again, but he ignored it. Finally, there was movement behind the door, the sound of a lock turning. Then another. The door opened a crack, held by a security chain. A woman's face appeared in the gap, late 20s, brown hair, and a bruise blooming on her right cheekbone. But it wasn't her injury that made James freeze. It was her eyes. Green eyes that he would recognize anywhere. Sarah? He whispered, his professional demeanor cracking. The woman's eyes widened in shock. Jamie? Sarah Miller, his high school sweetheart. The girl who had disappeared from his life 15 years ago without a word of explanation. The face from his past that still occasionally haunted his dreams. Sarah, who did this to you? James fought to maintain his composure. Sarah glanced nervously over her shoulder before looking back at him. "You need to go, Jamie. Please. Open the door, Sarah. You don't understand. Open the door." After a moment of hesitation, she closed the door slightly, unhooked the chain, and opened it wider. James stepped inside, his training taking over as he quickly scanned the apartment for threats. It was small, but neat. A living room connected to a kitchenette with a hallway leading to what he assumed was a bedroom and bathroom. No sign of anyone else. Sarah hugged herself, keeping distance between them. Up close, James could see that the bruise on her cheek wasn't the only one. Finger marks wrapped around her wrist. A cut on her lip was partially concealed with makeup. "Who did this?" James asked again, his voice low and controlled despite the rage building inside him. "My husband," Sarah replied, her eyes downcast. "Ex-husband, technically. We're divorced, but he doesn't accept it." "Has he been here tonight?" "He left about an hour ago, but he has friends watching the building. He always knows when someone comes to see me." James felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "Why didn't you call me after all these years?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "Call you? Jamie, you're the last person I could call. Why? Because he was a cop." Sarah's voice rose before she caught herself, glancing fearfully at the door. "David was a police officer in Hartford. We met 6 months after I left town. Nobody believed me when he started hitting me. His buddies on the force made the reports disappear. The restraining order was a joke." James felt as if the floor had dropped out from under him. One of their own. The thin blue line that he'd been taught to never cross. But looking at Sarah now, seeing the fear in her eyes, the same fear he'd seen in his mother's, that line seemed meaningless. "You moved here to get away from him," James said. It wasn't a question. Sarah nodded. "I've been here 3 months. He found me last week. Said he just wanted to talk, to apologize." She gestured to her face. "This is his apology." James's phone vibrated again. Tommy's game would be starting soon. The boy would scan the bleachers, looking for his father, and once again, he wouldn't be there. "I need to call this in, get you protection," James said, reaching for his radio. "No!" Sarah grabbed his arm. "Please, Jamie, he has friends everywhere. I tried that in Hartford, in Boston, in Buffalo. Each time, somehow, he finds out. Each time it gets worse." The desperation in her voice took him back 15 years, to the night under the bleachers when she had told him she loved him, that they would be together forever. 2 days later, she was gone. No explanation, no goodbye, just vanished from his life. "Why did you leave?" The question escaped before he could stop it. Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Your father came to see me." The words hit James like a physical blow. "My father? He said you were going to college on a football scholarship, that you were going to have a real future. He said I was holding you back." Sarah wiped at her tears. "He said if I really loved you, I would let you go." James felt the old anger rising, the same anger he'd spent years learning to control. "And you believed him?" "I was 17, Jamie, and he was right. Look at you now. You have a life, a career. If I had stayed—" "If you had stayed, things would have been different," James said quietly. "For both of us." A silence fell between them, 15 years of unspoken words hanging in the air. Finally, James's training reasserted itself. "We need to document your injuries, file a report." Sarah shook her head. "He'll kill me this time. I know he will. Not if I stop him first. You don't know him. You don't know what he's capable of." But James did know. He had seen it in his own home, had felt it in the bruises his father left, had heard it in his mother's cries at night. "Pack a bag," James said firmly. "Essentials only. You're not staying here." "Where am I supposed to go? A shelter?" "He'll find me." "No, not a shelter." James made a decision that would change everything. "You're coming with me." Sarah stared at him in disbelief. "Jamie, you can't." "I can. I will." He reached for his phone. "I just need to make a call first." James stepped into the hallway for privacy. He dialed Lisa's number, his stomach tight with guilt. "Hey," Lisa's voice was tense. Tommy's been asking when you'll get here. Lisa, I'm not going to make it tonight. He hated the words as they left his mouth. James, you promised him. This is the championship. I know, I'm sorry. Something's come up. A situation from my past. Someone needs help. The silence on the other end was deafening. Lisa, do you remember when I told you about Sarah? From high school? Another pause. The girl who broke your heart. She's in trouble. Serious trouble. Her ex-husband is abusive. He's a cop from Hartford. She needs a safe place. And you want to bring her to our home? Lisa's voice had an edge he rarely heard. Just for tonight, until I can figure something out. Our son is waiting for you at his game, James. The guilt twisted deeper. Tell Tommy I love him. Tell him I'll make it up to him. Like you always do. Lisa sighed. Do what you need to do, James. You always do anyway. The call ended before he could respond. James stood in the hallway, the weight of his decision pressing down on him. He was risking his marriage, possibly his career, for a woman who had walked out of his life without explanation. But looking through the doorway at Sarah, seeing her gather her meager belongings with shaking hands, he knew he couldn't turn away. Not again. Not like the officers who had turned away from his mother. Back in the apartment, Sarah had packed a small duffel bag. I can't let you do this, Jamie. You have a life now, a family. How do you know that? I saw your wedding ring, and your lock screen when you made that call, a boy in a baseball uniform. James looked down at his hand, at the gold band that suddenly felt constricting. Tommy, he's 10, championship game tonight, and you're missing it because of me. Sarah zipped up her bag. I can't be responsible for that. This isn't on you, James said firmly. This is my choice. Sarah was about to respond when her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She glanced at it, and the color drained from her face. What is it? James asked, instantly alert. David, he's on his way back. Says he has a surprise for me. Her hands were shaking as she showed him the message. James made a quick decision. We're leaving now. Is there a back exit? Fire escape outside the bedroom window, but grab your bag. They moved quickly to the bedroom. James helped Sarah through the window onto the metal landing of the fire escape. The rain had eased to a drizzle, but the metal was still slick. As James climbed out after her, headlights swept across the parking lot below. A dark sedan pulled into a space, and a man got out, looking up at the building. That's him, Sarah whispered, shrinking back against the wall. James studied the man. Medium height, muscular build, short military haircut. He moved with the confidence of someone used to authority. James recognized the type all too well. Down quickly, James instructed, guiding Sarah down the fire escape stairs. They reached the bottom landing, but the ladder to the ground was stuck. Below them, David entered the building. They had minutes at most. James jerked hard on the ladder, the rusty mechanism finally giving way with a screech that seemed to echo through the night. He helped Sarah down, then followed. They hurried across the back lot toward his patrol car, sticking to the shadows. Get in, James said, opening the passenger door of his unmarked unit. Sarah slid inside while James quickly got behind the wheel. He started the engine and pulled away from the curb, driving slowly to avoid attracting attention. In his rearview mirror, he saw a figure burst out of the building's front entrance, looking frantically around the parking lot. He knows I'm gone, Sarah whispered, sinking lower in her seat. James turned at the next corner, putting distance between them and the apartment complex. His mind raced through options, protocols, regulations, all the rules he was breaking. Technically, he was still on duty. He hadn't called in the situation properly. He was transporting a civilian in his patrol car without authorization. He was involving himself in a case with personal connections, career suicide by any measure. I need to call this in, Sarah. Properly. We need to get a protective order, get you into the system. Sarah shook her head vehemently. Jamie, please. You don't understand how it works. The moment my name hits the system, he'll know. He still has friends, connections. Not in my department, not with me. You can't be with me 24/7. She was right, and they both knew it. A protective order was just paper. The system had cracks, and men like David knew how to exploit them. James's radio crackled. Unit 17. What's your status on that domestic at Oakwood? Sarah looked at him with wide, fearful eyes. James hesitated, then keyed his radio. Dispatch, this is Unit 17. No contact made at that address. Apartment appears vacant, clearing the call and returning to station. Shift end approaching. Copy that, Unit 17. The lie sat heavily in his stomach. 15 years on the force without a black mark on his record. Now this. Thank you, Sarah whispered beside him. James didn't respond. He was too busy calculating next steps, weighing options. He couldn't take Sarah home, not with Lisa already upset, not with the risk it might pose to Tommy. A hotel was too exposed. Department resources were out of the question now that he'd lied in an official capacity. I know somewhere we can go, he finally said, just for tonight. James drove through the rain-slicked streets, taking a circuitous route to ensure they weren't followed. Sarah sat silently beside him, occasionally checking over her shoulder. The city lights blurred through the wet windows, casting kaleidoscope patterns across their faces. Where are we going? Sarah finally asked as they turned onto a rural road leading out of town. My uncle's cabin, about 30 minutes outside the city. He passed away last year, but I still have the key. No one knows about it except family. Family. The word hung between them. Once he had thought they might be family. Once he had dreamed of a future with Sarah by his side. Now he had a different family, a wife who was justifiably angry, and a son who was, once again, disappointed by his absence. They drove in silence for a while, the rhythm of the wipers marking time. Finally, Sarah spoke again. I'm sorry, Jamie, for leaving, for not explaining, for everything. James kept his eyes on the road. It was a long time ago. Not long enough, apparently. She trailed off. Still what? Still think about what might have been if I had stayed, if I had been brave enough to defy your father. James gripped the steering wheel tighter. My father had no right to interfere. He thought he was doing what was best for you, like he always did. The bitterness in James's voice surprised even him, like when he thought it was best to teach me discipline with his belt, or when he thought it was best to remind my mother of her place with his fists. Sarah reached across the center console, her hand hovering near his arm before retreating. I'm sorry. I should have known better. You couldn't have known. I never told anyone, not even you. Another stretch of silence. The rain had stopped, but the road was still wet, reflecting the headlights like a mirror. Does your wife know? About your father? James nodded slowly. Lisa knows everything. I made sure of that before we got married. No secrets, no surprises. She must be a strong woman. She is. James felt a pang of guilt. Stronger than I deserve. They turned onto a gravel road, the patrol car bouncing over the uneven surface. After a few minutes, a small cabin appeared, nestled among pine trees. James parked and turned off the engine. Wait here, he instructed, drawing his service weapon. He approached the cabin cautiously, checking windows and the perimeter before returning to the car. All clear. Inside, the cabin was basic but comfortable. A main room with a kitchenette and fireplace, a small bedroom and a bathroom. The air was stale, but otherwise it seemed well maintained. My uncle used to come up here every month, James explained, switching on lamps. After he died, I kept meaning to sell it, but he shrugged. It's peaceful here. Sarah set her bag down, looking around. It's perfect, thank you. James checked his phone. No service. That was both a blessing and a curse. David couldn't track them here, but neither could Lisa reach him. He'd have to drive back toward town to check in. There's food in the pantry, he said, opening cupboards. Canned stuff mostly. The generator should work if we need power, but the propane stove doesn't need electricity. Sarah had moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. Do you think he'll look for me at your house? The question sent ice through James's veins. He hadn't considered that. How would he know where I live? I don't know. But he has ways of finding information, resources. James reached for his phone again, forgetting momentarily about the lack of service. I need to warn Lisa. I'm sorry, Sarah said again, her voice breaking. I shouldn't have opened the door. I should have let you walk away. No, James said firmly. You did the right thing, and now we'll handle this the right way. He grabbed his keys. I need to drive back to get cell service. Lock the door behind me. There's a shotgun in the bedroom closet. Do you know how to use it? Sarah nodded, surprising him. David made sure I knew how to handle his guns. He said a cop's wife needed to be prepared. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. I'll be back as soon as I can, James promised. Don't open the door for anyone but me. Back in his car, James drove until his phone showed bars, then pulled over. He called Lisa, but the call went to voicemail. He tried again. Nothing. Tried the house phone. No answer. A cold fear gripped him. He was about to call for a patrol to do a welfare check when his phone rang. Lisa's number. Lisa, are you okay? Is Tommy? We're fine, she cut him off, her voice tight. We just got home from the game. Tommy's team won, by the way. Relief flooded through him. Listen, Lisa, I need you to take Tommy and go to your sister's house tonight. What? James, what's going on? I can't explain everything right now, but I'm worried that Sarah's ex might come looking for her at our house. He's dangerous, Lisa. He's a cop gone bad. Silence, then. You're serious. Deadly serious. Please, just pack an overnight bag and go to Jen's. Don't tell anyone where you're going. James, you're scaring me. I'm sorry. I just need to know you and Tommy are safe while I figure this out. Another pause. What about you? Where are you? Uncle Mike's cabin. Sarah's here. She's safe for now. You took her to the cabin. Lisa's voice was flat, not angry, just resigned. It was the only place I could think of that's off the grid. Of course it was. Lisa sighed. I'll take Tommy to Jen's, but James, this needs to be the last time. Tommy needs his father. I need my husband. The words stung because they were true. I know. I'll fix this. I promise. Be careful. James ended the call and sat for a moment, gathering his thoughts. The right thing to do, the professional thing, would be to call in now. Report everything. Get Sarah into protective custody. Let the system work. But the system had already failed Sarah multiple times. And if David truly had connections, official channels could put her at even greater risk. James started the car and headed back to the cabin, his mind made up. He would handle this himself, not as Officer Mercer, but as Jamie, the boy who had once promised to always protect the girl he loved. By the time he returned to the cabin, rain had started falling again. He rapped on the door in a specific pattern they had agreed upon. It's me, Sarah. The lock turned, and Sarah opened the door, the shotgun held at a proper low-ready position. Her stance told him that she wasn't exaggerating about knowing how to handle firearms. Everything okay? She asked, lowering the gun as he stepped inside. Lisa and Tommy are going to stay with her sister tonight, just to be safe. Sarah nodded, looking guilty. I never meant to disrupt your life, Jamie. You didn't. David did. James hung his wet jacket by the door. We need to think about next steps. This cabin is temporary. You need somewhere permanent, somewhere he can't find you. I've tried that. 3 states, 5 cities in the past 2 years. He always finds me. Then maybe it's time to stop running and face him. Sarah's eyes widened. You don't understand what he's capable of. I think I do. James sat at the small kitchen table. My father was the same way. The need for control, the rage when that control slips, the pleasure they take in fear. Sarah sat across from him, her hands curled around a mug of tea she must have made while he was gone. How did it end? With your father? James stared at the table. He wrapped his car around a tree when I was in college. Drunk. Died instantly. He looked up at her. I'm not proud of this, but I felt relief when I got that call. I was free. And your mother? Remarried a few years later. A decent man, finally. James reached across the table, hesitantly placing his hand over hers. But we can't wait for David to drink himself into a tree. We need to be proactive. Sarah turned her hand to grip his. What are you suggesting? Evidence, documentation, everything he's done to you, everywhere you've reported it. We build a case so solid that even his connections can't make it disappear. Then we take it not just to my department, but to the state police, the FBI if necessary. You could lose your job, Jamie, going outside the chain of command like that. Some things are more important than a job. Their eyes met across the table, years melting away. For a moment, they weren't adults weighted down by years of choices and consequences. They were teenagers again, believing that love could conquer anything. Sarah broke the gaze first. Even if we gather evidence, it could take months. Where am I supposed to go in the meantime? I have a friend in the U.S. Marshals Service. Witness protection is extreme, but he might have resources, connections that could help keep you safe and off the grid. Sarah nodded slowly, hope dawning in her eyes for perhaps the first time. You really think we could make this work? I do. But Sarah, you have to be all in. No more running, no more disappearing. I'm tired of running, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. So tired. James squeezed her hand. Then let's end it. For good this time. They stayed up late into the night, formulating a plan. Sarah would document everything. Dates, locations, injuries, police reports filed and dismissed. James would take a week's vacation time to help her gather evidence, to reach out to his contact in the Marshals Service, to build their case. As the night deepened, exhaustion finally caught up with them. James insisted Sarah take the bedroom while he would sleep on the couch. Jamie, Sarah said as she stood in the bedroom doorway, thank you for believing me, for helping me. I should have been there for you 15 years ago. You're here now, that's what matters. James settled on the couch, his service weapon on the coffee table within reach. Despite his exhaustion, sleep eluded him. His thoughts drifted between past and present. Sarah as she was then, Sarah as she was now, Lisa's voice on the phone, Tommy's face scanning the bleachers for the father who never showed. He must have dozed off eventually because the sound of breaking glass jolted him awake. He grabbed his gun, instantly alert. Sarah? He called, moving toward the bedroom. No response. The cabin was dark except for moonlight filtering through the windows. James approached the bedroom door, pushing it open slowly. Sarah wasn't there. The window was broken from the outside, glass scattered across the floor. Signs of a struggle. The bedside lamp knocked over, the sheets tangled. Sarah! James shouted, rushing to the window. Outside, he could see nothing but darkness and trees. He ran for the front door, gun ready. Outside, he heard the sound of an engine starting somewhere in the distance. James sprinted toward the noise, but by the time he reached the main road, he could only see taillights disappearing around a bend. David had found them somehow, and he had taken Sarah. James ran back to the cabin for his keys, his mind racing. How had David tracked them here? The cabin was off-grid, known only to family. Unless someone had followed them from the apartment. Unless David had connections that ran deeper than Sarah realized. In his patrol car, James radioed in, protocol be damned. Dispatch, this is Officer Mercer. I need to report a kidnapping at 457 Pine Valley Road. Suspect is David Miller, former Hartford PD. Victim is Sarah Miller. Suspect is potentially armed and dangerous. Officer Mercer, you're supposed to be off duty. What's your involvement in this situation? The question he had been dreading. The moment of truth. The victim is a protected witness in an ongoing investigation. I was assigned to guard her. The lie came easily now. Suspect ambushed us at a safe house. I need all available units looking for a dark sedan, possibly a Chrysler 300, heading east on County Road 27. Copy that, Officer Mercer. All units being alerted. Stay on your radio. James tossed the radio aside and floored the accelerator. He knew where David was taking her. Back to the apartment, to his territory, where he felt in control. The drive back to the city was a blur of rain and streetlights. James pushed the patrol car to its limits, praying he wasn't too late. As he approached Sarah's apartment complex, he cut his lights, slowing to observe the parking lot. There it was, a dark Chrysler 300, parked haphazardly near the entrance. James parked a block away and approached on foot, his heart pounding. He should wait for backup. He should follow procedure. But every second counted now. At the apartment building, James took the stairs 2 at a time, moving silently, despite his urgency. Outside 2B, he paused, listening. A man's voice, low and threatening. "You think you can just leave? You think anyone else will ever want you?" Sarah's response was too quiet to hear. Then the sound of a slap, followed by a cry of pain. James's vision narrowed. The rage he had spent a lifetime controlling, now focused to a laser point. He stepped back, then drove his foot into the door beside the lock. The door burst open. David stood in the center of the room, his hand raised to strike again. Sarah was on the floor, a fresh cut on her lip. David spun toward the door, and James saw the gleam of a gun in his waistband. "Police! Don't move!" James shouted, his weapon trained on David's chest. David froze, a smile spreading slowly across his face as he recognized the uniform. Well, one of my brothers in blue. "Look, buddy, this is a domestic matter. Why don't you just step away from her?" James ordered, his voice deadly calm. "Hands where I can see them." David's eyes narrowed as he studied James's face. "Wait, I know you. You're the one who took her from me." His hand inched toward his waistband. "She's my wife. This is between us." "Sarah, come toward me," James directed, never taking his eyes off David. Sarah began to crawl sideways, trying to put distance between herself and David. In one fluid motion, David drew his gun. "Stay where you are," he shouted at Sarah. 2 guns now, pointed at each other, a tableau of tension that could erupt at any moment. "You don't want to do this," James said evenly. "You're outnumbered. Backup is on the way." "You think I'm afraid of the local yokels?" David sneered. "I had a decorated career, 15 years on the force. They'll believe me over you. Not with your history, not with Sarah's testimony, not with the evidence we've gathered." Doubt flickered across David's face. "What evidence?" "Everything. The restraining orders, the dismissed complaints, the medical records. It's all documented now, and it's not just with my department, it's with the state police, the FBI." It was a bluff, but David's confidence wavered. "You're lying." "You haven't had time. We've been building this case for months," James continued, the lie growing. "Sarah reached out to me when she first moved to town. We've been preparing, waiting. She couldn't." David's grip on his gun tightened. Sarah had reached the wall now, still on the floor, watching the standoff with terror in her eyes. "It's over, David," James said firmly. "Put the gun down. You can still walk out of here in cuffs instead of a body bag." David's face contorted with rage. "If I can't have her, no one will." He swung his gun toward Sarah. James fired without hesitation. The shot echoed through the apartment. David staggered backward, clutching his shoulder, his gun clattering to the floor. Before he could recover, James was on him, securing his weapon and cuffing him despite his howls of pain and rage. "Officer down," James spoke into his radio. "Suspect in custody. Need medical assistance at 1457 Oakwood Avenue, apartment 2B. Officer wounded in the line of duty." Not technically a lie. David was indeed a police officer, even if former. Sarah had pulled herself to her feet, watching in shock as James secured David to a radiator, then applied pressure to his wound. "Jamie," she began, her voice shaking. Before she could continue, the apartment filled with officers, then paramedics. David was treated, then escorted out on a stretcher, still spewing threats and accusations. Sarah was examined, her statement taken. James gave his report, a sanitized version of events that omitted the cabin, their history, anything that might compromise the case against David. Hours later, after the chaos had subsided, James found Sarah sitting on a bench outside the apartment building, a blanket around her shoulders. "It's really over?" she asked as he sat beside her. "It's really over," he confirmed. "David's going to prison for a long time. Kidnapping, assault, attempted murder of a police officer. These aren't charges that his connections can make disappear. And you? Will you be in trouble for everything?" James shrugged. "I'll face consequences for some procedural violations. But given the circumstances, my captain is being understanding. Sarah nodded slowly, staring at the ground. What happens now? Now you rebuild. Wherever you want, however you want. And what about us? About what might have been? James looked at her, this woman who had once been the center of his world. In another life, they might have had a future together. In this one, they had both made choices that led them in different directions. We can't go back, Sarah, he said gently. What might have been? That's not the path either of us took. Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes. You have a family now. I do. And they deserve the best version of me, not someone living in the past or wondering about roads not taken. Do you love her, your wife? James didn't hesitate. Yes, it's different from what we had. We were kids. Everything was intense and new. What Lisa and I have built, it's deeper, stronger, because it's weathered real life. Sarah smiled through her tears. She's lucky to have you. I'm the lucky one, James admitted. And after tonight, I need to remind her of that. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their shared history and separate futures hanging between them. What will you do now? James finally asked. Sarah took a deep breath. Start over. Again. But this time without looking over my shoulder. She hesitated. I was thinking about going back to school. Finish my degree in social work. You'd be good at that, James said, remembering how she had always been the one to help others in high school, to champion the underdogs. I want to help women like me. Show them there's a way out. She touched the bruise on her face. Show them they're worth saving. James nodded. If you need references for school applications or anything, really. Thank you. Sarah stood, adjusting the blanket around her shoulders. I should go. The victim advocate said they have a place for me tonight. James stood as well. I'll check in tomorrow. Make sure you have everything you need to press charges. Officially this time, Sarah added with a small smile. Officially, James agreed. They faced each other, 15 years of might-have-beens dissolving in the early morning light. Goodbye, Jamie, Sarah said softly. Goodbye, Sarah. No embrace, no kiss, just a look that acknowledged everything they had been to each other and everything they could not be. James watched as Sarah walked toward the waiting advocate's car. Then he turned and headed for his patrol car. His shift had ended hours ago. His captain had told him to take the day off, to rest after the ordeal. Instead, James drove home, where his son would be waking up for school, where his wife would be waiting for an explanation, for the truth about the night that had changed everything and nothing. As he pulled into his driveway, James saw Tommy at the window, his face lighting up as he recognized his father's car. Lisa appeared behind him, her expression more guarded. James took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. It was time to keep the promises that mattered most, not the ones from his past, but the ones that would shape his future, the ones he had made to the family he had chosen, the life he had built. The door opened, and Tommy ran out, his baseball uniform still on from the night before. Dad, we won. We're the champions. James knelt and caught his son in his arms, holding him tight. I'm so proud of you, buddy. Over Tommy's shoulder, James met Lisa's eyes. There would be difficult conversations ahead, explanations and apologies, trust to rebuild. But in this moment, as the morning sun warmed his face and his son's arms wrapped around his neck, James knew he was exactly where he was meant to be. He was home,